Well, I enjoy playing the music. I enjoy the crowds coming in and enjoying the music. There's a great energy exchange out there. Whether it's me or whoever the entertainer is, people come a long way, pay a lot of money to see somebody they like, and when they come see me, that's great.
It's 2024, and Willie Nelson is sitting in his tour bus, staring out at the Texas landscape he's called home for 92 years. His hands are shaking slightly, not from age, but from what he's about to reveal. After 7 decades of carefully guarded silence, Willie is finally ready to tell the world a secret that could rewrite country music history. "Bobby isn't my sister," he says quietly. "Never was." Let that sink in for a moment. Willie Nelson and his piano-playing sister Bobby have been country music's most beloved sibling duo for over 6 decades. She's been by his side through every triumph, every scandal, every comeback. She's the woman who taught him his first chords, who stood behind his piano on countless stages, who the world believed shared his blood, his DNA, his Nelson family legacy. It was all a lie. But here's what makes this story absolutely incredible. That lie didn't weaken their bond. It created the strongest relationship in country music history, and it nearly destroyed Willie's career before it even began. Take yourself back to 1933, right in the heart of the Great Depression. Texas is getting hammered. Families are falling apart everywhere you look. Dust storms are burying farms. Banks are failing, and people are abandoning their children because they simply can't feed them anymore. That's when 2 kids, Willie, barely a year old, and Bobby, about 3, end up on the doorstep of Willie's grandparents in Abbott, Texas. Willie was actually their grandson, abandoned by his parents who couldn't handle the responsibility. But Bobby? She was a neighbor's child, dropped off by parents who were fleeing west, looking for work, hoping for a better life they'd never find. Willie's grandparents, Mama and Daddy Nelson, made a decision that would change music history. They didn't just take in 2 abandoned kids, they created a family. They told everyone in Abbott, Texas that Bobby was Willie's sister. They convinced the kids themselves that they were blood relatives. They built an entire identity around this fictional family bond, and it worked perfectly. Willie and Bobby grew up believing they were siblings. They shared everything: music lessons, dreams, that tiny house in Abbott. Bobby taught Willie piano, Willie picked up guitar. They harmonized together, fought like real siblings, protected each other like real siblings. To everyone who knew them, including themselves, they were the Nelson kids. The music world fell in love with their story. Here were these 2 kids from Depression-era Texas who'd stuck together through everything, who'd climbed out of poverty through pure talent and sibling loyalty. It was beautiful. It was inspiring. It was exactly what people wanted to believe about family and music and the American dream. But in the early 1960s, when Willie was grinding it out in Nashville, trying to make it as a songwriter, somebody started digging into his background. Maybe it was a record executive doing due diligence. Maybe it was a journalist looking for a story. Maybe it was just some bureaucrat checking birth certificates. Whatever happened, someone discovered that Willie Nelson and Bobby Nelson weren't actually related by blood. The sister act that had charmed audiences across Texas was built on a lie that their grandparents had constructed 30 years earlier. Willie found out the truth about the same time the industry did. Imagine that moment. You're 27 years old. You've built your entire identity around being Willie Nelson, Bobby's little brother, and suddenly you discover that the most important relationship in your life was based on a fiction. But here's what's incredible about Willie Nelson. He didn't care. The moment he learned the truth, his first thought wasn't about himself or his career or what this might mean for his reputation. His first thought was protecting Bobby, because Willie realized something that would define the rest of his life. Family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up. It's about who stands by you when everything falls apart. It's about who believes in your dreams, even when they seem impossible. Bobby had been all of those things for Willie, and Willie had been all of those things for Bobby. The fact that they didn't share DNA didn't change any of that. But Nashville didn't see it that way. The music industry saw an opportunity. and they were about to use Willie's secret to destroy everything he'd worked for. The question is, would Willie sacrifice his own dreams to protect the woman who'd raised him, taught him, and loved him like a real sister? Or would he let the industry tear apart the most important relationship in his life? Willie Nelson was broke in 1964. Not just regular broke, Nashville broke, which is a special kind of desperate. He'd been grinding it out on Music Row for 3 years, writing songs during the day, playing honky-tonks at night, sleeping in his car more often than he slept in a bed. His marriage was falling apart. His kids barely knew him, and the only thing keeping him going was the belief that his talent would eventually pay off. That's when the phone call came. "Willie, we need to talk. Come to the office. Now." The voice belonged to Ray Baker, one of Nashville's most connected music executives. Baker wasn't just any suit. He was the guy who could make or break careers with a single conversation. If Ray Baker wanted to see you urgently, it meant one of two things. You were about to get very rich, or you were about to get destroyed. Willie walked into that office expecting to discuss a publishing deal or maybe a recording contract. Instead, he found 3 men in expensive suits sitting around a conference table with a manila folder thick with documents. "Sit down, Willie. We've got some interesting information about your family." That's when Willie's blood went cold. He knew exactly what was in that folder. Baker opens the file and starts reading. Birth certificates, adoption records, census data. All the paperwork that proved Bobby Nelson wasn't actually Willie Nelson's biological sister. They had everything. Dates, names, witness statements from people back in Abbott who remembered when Bobby's real parents dropped her off at the Nelson house. "Now, Willie," Baker says, sliding the papers across the table. "This is quite a story. The Nelson siblings who aren't actually siblings. The Family Act built on a lie. Can you imagine how the press would react to something like this?" Willie's mind was racing. He wasn't thinking about his own career. He was thinking about Bobby back in Abbott, playing piano at the local church, living her quiet life, completely unaware that her entire identity was about to be blown apart by Nashville power brokers. "What do you want?" Willie asks. Baker smiles. "Smart man." "Here's the thing, Willie. We've got big plans for you. Your songwriting is incredible. Hello Walls, Crazy, Nightlife. These aren't just songs, they're standards. You're going to make us all very rich." Willie's waiting for the catch. There's always a catch. "But," Baker continues, "we need to make sure there are no surprises. No scandals. No embarrassing family secrets that could hurt your marketability. So here's what's going to happen." Baker pulls out a contract. It's thick, full of legal language, but Willie can see the important parts clearly enough. If he signs this deal, he'll get a major publishing contract, recording opportunities, the full Nashville treatment. But buried in the fine print is the killer clause. Willie has to sign over 75% of his publishing rights. Not the usual 50%, 75%. "That's highway robbery," Willie says. "No, Willie, that's insurance. See, we're taking a big risk on a songwriter whose family history might become a problem. This is our protection. You get rich, we get richer, and nobody ever hears about your sister situation." Willie stares at that contract for what feels like hours. This is everything he's worked for. This is his shot at real success, real money, real recognition. All he has to do is sign away most of his rights to his own music, and his secret stays buried forever. But then Baker drops the real bomb. "Of course, if you don't sign, well," Baker shrugs. "These documents might find their way to some journalists. Maybe some folks back in Abbott start getting phone calls from reporters. Maybe Bobby starts seeing her picture in the papers with headlines about the fake Nelson family. You know how these small-town scandal stories go. They tend to destroy people." Willie realizes what's happening. This isn't just about money. This is about power. This is about control. These guys don't just want to own his music. They want to own him. They want him scared, desperate, and completely dependent on them. And they're using Bobby as leverage. Willie thinks about his sister back home, completely innocent in all of this. She'd given up her own musical dreams to support his career. She'd sacrificed everything to help him chase his Nashville ambitions. And now, he's sitting in a room where powerful men are threatening to destroy her life to control his. "I need time to think about this," Willie says. "You've got 24 hours, Baker replies. "After that, we start making phone calls." Willie walked out of that office knowing he was trapped. Sign the contract and become Nashville's property forever. Don't sign and watch the industry destroy the most important person in his life. But Willie Nelson had never been good at accepting other people's ultimatums, and he was about to prove that some bonds are stronger than any business deal, stronger than any threat. "Here's my offer," Willie continued, pushing the unsigned contract back across the table. "You can take this deal and shove it straight to hell. And if you want to destroy Bobby's life to prove some kind of point, you go right ahead. But I'm done playing your game." The room went dead silent. These men weren't used to being told no. They weren't used to desperate artists walking away from their only shot at success. "You're making a big mistake, Willie," Baker said, his voice getting hard. "You'll never work in this town again." "We'll make sure of that." "Then I guess I won't work in this town," Willie replied. And with that, he walked out of Nashville forever. But Willie's defiance came with a price that almost broke him. Within weeks, word spread through Music Row that Willie Nelson was persona non grata. Radio stations stopped playing his songs. Publishers wouldn't take his calls. Session musicians who'd worked with him for years suddenly became unavailable. The Nashville machine had spoken, and Willie Nelson was out. Willie packed up his family and headed back to Texas, but the damage was already done. His marriage couldn't survive the financial pressure and constant uncertainty. His kids watched their father go from struggling songwriter to complete industry outcast. The man who'd written Crazy and Hello Walls was reduced to playing beer joints and honky-tonks for $50 a night. And the worst part? Bobby didn't even know why Willie had sacrificed everything. Willie couldn't tell her the truth about Nashville's ultimatum without revealing the secret about their family. So Bobby watched her brother throw away his career for reasons she couldn't understand. She saw him get blacklisted from the industry he'd fought so hard to crack. She watched him struggle financially while she played piano in Abbott, feeling helpless and confused. "I kept asking Willie what happened in Nashville," Bobby would later remember. "He'd just say it didn't work out, that he wasn't cut out for their kind of business. But I could see something had broken inside him. The guilt was eating Bobby alive. She knew Willie had given up everything to chase his dreams, and now those dreams were dead. She started to believe that somehow she was holding him back. Maybe if she hadn't been part of his story, maybe if he'd been a solo artist instead of half of a sibling duo, things would have been different. By 1970, Willie was at rock bottom. He was playing dive bars, living in a trailer, watching younger artists achieve the success that had been stolen from him. His old songs were making other people rich while he couldn't afford to fix his car. That's when Willie made another decision that would change everything. If Nashville wouldn't let him play their game, he'd create his own game. If they wouldn't let him be their kind of country star, he'd invent a completely different kind of country music. Willie started growing his hair long, stopped wearing the rhinestone suits, and began playing music that sounded nothing like the polished Nashville product. He was raw, authentic, rebellious, everything the industry had tried to control. He was creating what would become known as outlaw country, and he didn't even realize it. Other artists who'd been burned by Nashville started gravitating toward Willie. Waylon Jennings, Chris Christopherson, guys who'd also refused to play by the industry's rules. They were all outsiders now, but together, they were building something powerful. And slowly, Bobby began to understand what Willie had done for her. It happened during a conversation in 1972. Willie was explaining why he'd left Nashville, carefully dancing around the real reason, when Bobby stopped him mid-sentence. "Willie," she said quietly, "I know we're not really brother and sister." Willie's heart stopped. "What?" "I've always known," Bobby continued. "I remembered my real parents, remembered being brought to Mama and Daddy Nelson's house. I just never said anything because I didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings." Willie stared at his sister, this woman who'd shaped his entire life, and realized that she'd been protecting the same secret he'd been protecting. They'd both been carrying this burden, both trying to shield the other from a truth that didn't matter anyway. "Then you know why I couldn't sign that contract," Willie said. "You gave up Nashville to protect me," Bobby replied. "You sacrificed everything so they couldn't hurt me with something that doesn't even matter." That's when they both understood something profound. The lie that their grandparents had created hadn't made them fake siblings. It had made them something stronger than siblings. They'd chosen each other, protected each other, and sacrificed for each other in ways that most blood relatives never do. Willie's refusal to bow to Nashville's ultimatum hadn't just saved Bobby's reputation. It had created a new kind of country music, inspired other artists to reject industry control, and proved that authentic artistry was more powerful than any business machine. But more importantly, it had revealed the truth about family, that the strongest bonds aren't created by blood. They're created by choice, by loyalty, and by love that refuses to be bought, sold, or threatened. Willie Nelson's greatest victory wasn't beating Nashville. It was discovering that some things are worth more than success. So why is Willie Nelson telling this story now? Why wait until he's 92 years old to reveal a secret that's been buried for 7 decades? "Because I'm running out of time," Willie says with that familiar grin. "And because people need to understand what really happened back then." Willie's decision to finally speak the truth comes at a time when the music industry is facing the same battles he fought in the 1960s. Streaming services are taking massive percentages from artists. Record labels still demand publishing rights in exchange for promotion. Young musicians are still being told they have to choose between artistic integrity and financial success. "I want them to know they have another choice," Willie explains. "They can walk away. They can create their own path. They can refuse to be owned." The timing of Willie's confession is also deeply personal. Bobby is 91 years old now, still playing piano with Willie's band when her health allows it. After 6 decades of performing together, they both know their time on stage is limited. "I wanted to tell this story while we're both here to tell it," Willie says. "I wanted people to understand that what we built together was real, even if the way it started wasn't traditional." When Willie finally told Bobby he was going public with their story, her reaction surprised him. Instead of worry or concern, she felt relief. "We've been carrying this secret for so long," Bobby told him. "Maybe it's time to let it go." But Willie's revelation has had an impact far beyond just clearing the air about his family history. The story has resonated with artists across every genre, reminding them that the most powerful weapon against industry exploitation is simply saying no. Country music historians are calling it one of the most important untold stories in the genre's history. Not just because of the family secret, but because of what Willie's choice represents. The moment when artistic integrity became more valuable than commercial success. Willie's decision to protect Bobby instead of signing that Nashville contract didn't just change his career. It helped birth the outlaw country movement. It inspired other artists to reject industry control. It proved that sometimes the best business decision is walking away from bad business. The bond between Willie and Bobby has become legendary in Nashville, not despite the fact that they're not blood relatives, but because of it. They chose each other, protected each other, and built something together that was stronger than any biological connection. "Family isn't about DNA," Willie says as our conversation winds down. "It's about who shows up when everything falls apart. It's about who you'd sacrifice everything to protect. and it's about who does the same for you. Today, Willie Nelson's net worth is estimated at $25 million. He's a member of the Country Music Hall of Fame, has won multiple Grammy Awards, and is considered one of the most influential musicians in American history. But when you ask him about his greatest achievement, he doesn't mention the money or the awards. "My greatest achievement," he says, "is that I never let them break up my family." At 92 years old, Willie Nelson has finally revealed the secret that shaped his entire life. But in doing so, he's revealed something even more profound, that the strongest families aren't born, they're built. And sometimes, the most important decision you can make is refusing to let anyone else control your story. Willie's story proves that integrity trumps industry pressure every time. What would you have chosen? Nashville success or family loyalty? Share your thoughts below, and if Willie's incredible journey inspired you, hit subscribe for more untold stories from music's greatest legends.